Okay, hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Marketing Corner. We are at
episode 102.
and now we're going to talk about something today that's a little bit sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I can say on behalf of most people out there, we've all tried it. We just, however, never want to talk about
We
it.
never want to talk about it. But what do we do here? We talk about
The
it.
things we don't want to talk about.
Yes.
Sometimes. So today we're going to talk about being laid off.
That's right.
From specifically coming from a marketing role, but just in general. And both you and me, Jen, we have tried it.
I wouldn't say tried. It was forced upon us.
Yeah.
But yes, we have experience.
We've been at the receiving end of this.
Yes, we have. Yes.
And it's tough, however you want to shape it.
Yes.
But so I think in general, what we want to do is kind of like give you guys like a little bit of advice. Like, what do you do when you do get laid off? It will probably happen to most of you in your career. So if you haven't tried it yet, brace
you haven't
yourself.
tried it.
but it does happen to most, especially these days. It's a tough market, right? So we want to kind of embrace it and see like, okay, what do we do about it? Like, how do we? It's not necessarily preventing it, but more like what do we do after?
How do we bounce
after the
back?
fact, right?
Yep.
So do you want to kick us off a little bit and like let's start with how many times in your career have you been laid off, Jen? Can you say that?
Once.
Once.
I think before I kick in, though,
Yeah.
let's do a disclaimer.
Disclaimer. Yes.
We are not lawyers.
No.
We are not employment lawyers. We are talking from our own personal experiences
Yes.
as people living in Denmark.
Yes.
This is not, if this happens to you, do not use this episode
Yeah.
as a legal document or
Nope.
anything like that.
No,
we are
please-
just sharing
please don't.
anecdotals.
And we will not mention companies by name because
Yeah.
otherwise they would kill us.
And and that's the other thing I wanted to emphasize. Like, one, we're
Yeah.
not lawyers. Two, this is not a ranting session. This is
No.
not to bitch and moan about people. This is purely the thing we do here at Marketing Corner is we talk about our experiences and how people can overcome them, learn from our mistakes, learn from our
Yeah.
experiences. So we're using this as an opportunity to say this was what happened to us. This is what we felt. This is what is normal, and this
Yeah.
is how we got out of it. And this is what we wish we had done sooner.
Exactly.
That's kind of what we want to do. So with that in mind,
With that big fat
Yes.
disclaimer out there,
yes.
let's get started.
Yes,
So it happened to you once in your
It
career.
happened to me once later in my career.
Yes.
Yes.
I've had it. Well, technically, I actually have like, if I'm being completely honest, 2.5 times. Is that
Two and a
fair?
half.
Yeah, because like the one time.
What's the half where you're like, I'm not leaving?
Yeah. So the 2 times was actually very early on in my career.
Okay.
I've actually had it 3.5. Jesus,
Three and
I've
a
been laid
half.
off a lot.
God damn it,
Okay.
Casper.
All right, but
Anyone, I need a new podcast host.
yeah, I'm not
anyone
good
out
enough,
there
like,
because
but
he's a
and-
menace.
And all of the 3 ones were early in the career, in
Mm-hmm.
my career, very early on. And the last one, the reason I'm saying a half is because it was very much a mutual thing.
Right.
So that wasn't really being laid off. It was more like if you guys don't want to do this, then I'm gonna leave. And they're like, we're not gonna do this. Okay.
Okay.
We should mutually leave.
Yeah, it's
So-
a conscious uncoupling.
yeah.
Yes.
So that was not really a laid off kind of thing, but yeah.
Okay.
So-
Interesting.
So I've tried. Apparently, I've tried a lot.
Yeah, you've there's something you're not telling me.
Yeah, I kind of, but I was thinking back and looking at like, yeah, actually, I've tried a little bit more.
But I think on a long enough timeline,
yes,
everyone's going to experience it once. It took
Definitely.
me 20 plus years of my career for this to happen to me.
Yeah.
It took you maybe less in the first of your few times, but I think the point of the story is if it can happen to us, it can happen to anyone. And
Yeah.
most of the marketers that I admire, that I look up to, have had it happen to them. It's a very sad club to be a part of, but it is normal, and it's becoming more
very
and more normal.
And it's, I think this is gonna sound so cliche and so whatever, but it is. There's a reason I am where I am today.
Yes.
And part of this is being fired / laid off.
Mm-hmm.
That has grown me way more than you can actually think. And we'll get into that in a second, but it's actually, looking back at it, it's not like I'm like, yay, that was great. Because in the moment, it was awful.
Yes.
I hated it. It was
It's
terrible.
the worst, yeah.
It's the fucking worst. But after, I just look back and say, that was great. I was like,
Yeah.
actually really good.
I think that was my realization too, and I think maybe we can talk about the kind of roller coaster of emotions
Yes.
that we went through. But they say like when a door closes, a window opens, and
It's very
for
true.
me, the silver lining of a really shitty situation was now all of a sudden the whole world of instead of focusing on this one organization where I'm doing great things, but there's also a lot of problems and fires that I'm putting out. And instead of focusing on that, all of a sudden it was like, there's a whole world out there. And I've changed career, essentially.
Yeah.
I have done a very big pivot, and I'm in a place now that I'm not that I wasn't enjoying it before, but I didn't end up worse off.
Nope.
And I think
Exactly.
that's the main takeaway of like, you will land on your feet, but here's some of the things that we should probably do.
And we're not trying to. I don't think we're trying to sugarcoat it either.
No.
Like it's not like
Sucks.
it's not the best thing in the world. It's not like you should get fired once a month.
Yes.
Like, that's not. What
Get
we're
out of your
looking-
comfort zone.
Yeah,
Be
exactly.
unemployed. Like, no.
That's not what we're trying to do. We're just trying to say it's not the end of the world. I think.
Yeah, it's
and
like it's
then sometimes
normalize it.
maybe for people out there, if you've just been laid off or have tried it, if you've never tried it before, it's just been like it is not the end of the world.
Yeah.
But it is tough.
Yeah, and I think maybe let's start with that. Let's start with the roller coaster, you know, the 7 stages of grief or whatever
Yes.
that you have.
It's very classic. Right?
Yeah, maybe you can share yours and then I can share mine and we can take it from there.
So I can't remember the 7 stages necessarily, but
No,
I
I
just
don't either,
remember every single time I've been laid off, I've been very mad at the moment. Like in the moment, like you get sad, and I think I quickly, but a lot of the times I haven't actually been sad first. I've been mad 1st. Like I've always been like, fuck this shit, like fuck these guys, they don't deserve me, and blah blah blah. Right? That's happened every single time. And then after that, you get sad. Like I feel like I enter a grief or start reflecting on my own things. I'm like, oh, maybe I'm not good enough, and like you could have a crying session or whatever it is, right? And like, okay, you start doubting yourself. But what has always happened to me, and so that's not 7 stages, but at least what has always happened to me is I always managed to use that as fuel, like somehow. And that's, I think, so one of the cases, again, I'm not going to mention it by name, but it was very early on in my career, and it was very close. It was like an intersection where I was just finishing my studies. And it was kind of like my first real gig, if you could say so. And I didn't stay for long. And don't get me wrong, there was a lot of things about this company that were not completely out of my control. That had nothing to do, like, you could have put anyone in that place and it would have not gone well.
Right.
So it was what it was. So now that I'm older and more mature, I'm looking back and I was like, Casper, you did what you could.
Right.
With what you had to work with.
Yeah.
But I remember I got super mad. I got really mad at being fired, and I remember, and actually, I've told this story to a bunch of people one-on-ones, especially when I'm mentoring people. And it's like, what actually happened was I got really mad, and then I said, there's 80% of it I can't control. That was the founder, crazy, the company, all this kind of stuff. But there's 20% that I do feel was actually not off. Like there was a reason I got fired for some of these 20%, and those 20% annoyed me.
Okay.
So I was like, what? I can't fix the 80%, but maybe I can fix the 20.
Right.
So I actually, and this was very early on in my career. So back then I hadn't learned to I didn't understand tracking as an example. So like implementing a tracking script back in the day, I had no idea how to do that.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, how the fuck do I figure out how to do that? So I went in and took a course on how to do Google Tag Manager.
Right. And
Then
now you have the time.
Now I had the time, right? So I went in and did a course. I remember I didn't understand all Google Analytics, so I didn't do the course. I was always annoyed that I couldn't finish graphic stuff when I do ads, because I was like always depending on someone else. So like, fuck this shit. I'm just gonna go. I'm saying fuck a lot. Sorry, but I went in there and kind of like, okay, let me figure out how Canva works. Let me take a course on Photoshop and stuff. So I went in and did all these things to say like, I will never again be in a situation where I can't do the job I'm supposed to do because I'm depending on someone else.
Right.
I remember that that really drove me. Like I had like this fire. My wife like literally said like, you were insane in that period.
Right,
Like
yeah.
you could feel it. And then before, when I was looking for my first job after my studies, I would do like the classic applying for jobs. I would apply for 2 a week. Back then I didn't have a network. I was not where I am today. And so I applied for 2 jobs a week, and that was like the bare minimum, right?
Yeah.
Like that was what you had to do. And then in a half a year, I got maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 interviews at max. After that, after the firing the second time, I was like, fuck this shit. So I went down and said, fuck it, I'm going to apply for 10 jobs a week.
Wow.
Every week.
Okay.
And I started doing that. So I applied for 10 jobs a week. So now it went from having 2 or 3 interviews in half a year to 2 or 3 interviews per week.
Yeah.
It still took me 3 to 4 months to land the next gig, and that was also once again coincidence, but that's life. But that fire really carried me, and I actually think that's something. I don't know how to instill this to other people, and if you're listening, I don't know how to give this to you, give this fire to you. But I used this. I was just mad at the situation. I was like, I will never be in this situation again. I don't want to be in this situation ever again in life.
I think for me, it's very similar. I mean, I didn't get mad, and I was later in my career,
Yeah.
so I also
You had a network.
I had a network, I had a brand.
Yeah.
I had been getting offers for at least interviews and coffees and things that I'd been turning down because I was happy. But I think for me, mine came out of the blue.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. There were no signs that was coming. I had a return to work plan meeting like 3 or 4 days before.
Yeah.
So that was also the extra shock. Like I think sometimes when you're in a tough economic period, when you know that there's downsizing, when you kind of like it still
the
sucks,
fluctuations.
but you can feel something in the water. I did not see this coming. It was 8:00 at night. I was on maternity leave as well.
Brutal. So brutal,
and I got
right?
a work email, and I stupidly checked my work email, which I never really did.
Yeah.
And I got the email saying I had to come in the next day at 9 a.m. To talk about my future with the company. And of course, your heart sinks and the panic sets in. And, I'm crying, and I've got 3 kids with me, and I'm alone. And they're, Mommy, why are you crying? And like it was the worst. It was like the worst feeling and this loss of control. I couldn't fix the situation. And I'm very used to being in control. I'm used to, okay, there's a problem. I'm going to fix it. And I think that was the first emotion for me was like, I can't fix this. No. This is happening. There's nothing I can do. And whereas maybe earlier in my career, I wouldn't have a family. I wouldn't have people who can distract me. My daughter's saying, Mommy, will you play with me? And I'm here going, no, my world is collapsing as I know it. Not now, but you can't do that. And I think that was one thing that pulled me out of that funk. I was in that funk for maybe 15, 20 minutes. And then I realized my kids need me, And so that was maybe advice number 1 is like, there's got to be something to pull you out of this. Yes. You're more than your job. We'll talk more about the advice. And then when the actual event happened, I was mad, and I was kind of...
You were mad first, right?
I was scared. I was panicking, and I was like, "This can't be right. This can't be right." And I spoke to my union, and that's advice number 1: get a union. Get a union. And I'll talk a little bit about why I advise that, aside from the fact that they gave me advice. But I said, "Hey, maybe they're giving me a promotion because they just want to talk about my future in the company, right?" And they were like, "No,
no."
You don't get that kind of message at 8:00 at night if it's a good news.
No.
And then I had to call, and I think that's where I was. I wouldn't say I was combative, but the first thing the person on the other end, my manager, said was, "How are you?" And I said, "How do you think I am?"
Wow.
How do you think I am? I'm getting fired. How do you think I am? And it was like, so that was my stance.
That's cool, Jen.
Yeah. Well,
that's cool.
I mean,
I actually kind of dig that.
I was like, how do you think I am?
How do you think I am?
And I know it wasn't easy for him either. Like,
No,
I'm not
of
saying he
course
was
not.
enjoying it. No one enjoyed it.
one enjoys
it had to happen. But I think
There's probably a few people in the world who enjoy it.
maybe there's some psychos out there. But
not us.
this individual, that's not the case. I knew that this was not fun for him. It was horrible for everyone. And we just got through it. And it was kind of after that point, then I felt like I got dumped by someone I was really into.
Okay.
Like, that's how I felt. I felt like I've been dating someone who I was really into. I thought they were into me, and out of nowhere, they're like, "We're done. Pack your bags, get out." And that for me was like, what do I do with this? Yes. How do I find my way? And like, again, I was on maternity leave, so I also was under the assumption that I was safe. Yeah. And that's something I'd like to share with the listeners of kind of myth-busting parental leave.
You're not safe.
Because that's the thing. You're never 100% safe. And maybe if now's okay, I'd like to talk a little bit about the myth-busting of parental leave, because I learned a lot through talking to my union. And I'm not a lawyer. This is why you get a union to talk to you, but I just want to put some of those common misconceptions, because everyone I talk to is like, they can't do that. That's illegal. Yeah. It's not illegal. Like the police illegal. People who let me go did not do anything illegal. 1, you can be let go under restructuring. Restructuring is we're changing things around.
I do want to say,
and there's no room for you.
That's also, it's true, but I also feel it's so bullshit.
I cannot comment.
No, and I can.
You can.
But because that's also when you can't get fired for like normal reasons, as far as I understand, but you can get fired if there's a major restructuring happening.
Yes.
Or restructuring.
And there's no rule for you.
And there's no rule for when a restructure is big enough, right?
Correct.
So you can just call it. So that's why, if you've noticed, like a lot of people, and it's also funny, like I found like sometimes people go on LinkedIn, they always write there's a major restructuring. Sometimes I'm like, is that really what's happening, or did you just get fired?
Yeah. I mean, in my case, there was 4 of us.
Yeah.
That's not a lot of people, but it wasn't just me.
No.
But there's a restructuring, and this is Another thing to keep in mind, if that's the case, and for everyone out there who's in a company or maybe your leader gets let go, that means they cannot replace that person. And that's the important thing to remember. And that's in my letter, my severance letter, there was no role for you.
Okay.
That means if I work for you and you get laid off while you're on parental leave, I cannot have your job. I will not get your job because they cannot put someone in that role.
But can't they just call it something else?
They can, but I think if you have a union and you're paying your union and the roles are the same, so if you are a director and they hire a head of,
potato,
you could probably make a case that you didn't need to let me go.
Yeah.
So that's just one thing if you're the one getting laid off, but think of your promotion and things like that. And that's something from, the team that I was leading. I cannot be replaced.
No.
At least for, I think, 9 months or something like that. Don't quote me on that. But anyone who wanted to step into my shoes can't.
That's crazy. Actually.
And that's something,
that.
So that's part of the deal is part of a restructuring. There's no role for you. So they can't just get rid of you and bring in someone else to do your role.
It's dangerous to restructure your whole marketing team because then you can't hire marketing back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so that's myth number one. Myth number two, they can contact you while you're on maternity leave. That was something else that I was confused about. I thought they can't do that. They can't expect you to answer. They can't expect you to check, but they can contact you if that's the contact details they have. And then I think myth number three, which I was also very surprised at, is that your notice can be while you are on maternity leave. So in my contract and a lot of contracts out there, I had 3 months notice. But there's no rule that says your notice starts when your maternity leave ends. No. Your notice can be during your maternity leave. And that's incredibly inconvenient because that notice is the time you're supposed to look for jobs. Yeah. But if you are in charge of a baby, it's really hard for you to go on interviews.
It's actually brutal.
It's not illegal. That's the only thing I'm going to say. It's not illegal to do. So keep that in mind. And again, why getting a union can help you in these cases, which we can talk about. But that was kind of my spectrum of emotion was like scared, terrified. How am I going to take care of my family? But wait, I'm on maternity. But wait, you can't do this. Kind of, I hit the denial stage. Then I hit the angry stage. And then I was in the, all right, what are we going to do? And I decided to myself then and there, I'm going to say yes to everything. That was my you upskilled yourself. Mine was I'm going to say yes to anything. If I get invited to an event, I'm going. If I get invited to a networking event, I'm going. If I'm invited to speak, I'm going. And I was just in Copenhagen every single, every third day. I live an hour outside of Copenhagen, but I was in Copenhagen all the time. I said yes to everything. I talked to people who wanted to talk to me. Anyone who reached out to me on LinkedIn, I was like, yeah, let's have a call. And that got me, at least mentally, back in the game. That got me out of the funk and it got me back in the game. And I was like, oh my God, there's this whole world out here of there's private equity and there's agencies and there's contracting and there's so many other things that you can do that I didn't really open up.
You end up in a bubble, right? Sometimes
100%.
Like, you end up in a bubble when you're like, also because like I think speaking for both of us here, we're quite passionate, right? Once we're in a company, wherever the company is, we're in it.
Yeah. We're here to make this better.
We're here to make this better. We're like really passionate people.
Yeah. And in my case, I'd hired my whole team. Yeah. Like every single person, there were maybe 2 exceptions.
Did you also feel like you were disappointing them then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a way, I don't want to sound like I was abandoning them, but like I felt like, but I care about these people and who's going to lead them, who's going to be in charge of their development. And one of the things that I would get feedback on from my team is like, we know that you care about us. We know that you stick up for us. Yeah. And I'm like, who's going to do that now? Yeah. And the saying that I had to have in my head over and over again is, not my circus, not my monkeys, and that's like a saying of like, it's not my problem anymore. But you feel obligated to these people that you hired. Right? 100%.
I feel like it's also one thing I've also found is like, so it's kind of weird. I've never had a breakup with a girlfriend. Like I'm with my wife. We've been together for 10 years now. So, and before that, I've never actually had a girlfriend. So I never tried that. I'm just to say, like, I've never tried that side of a breakup. So this is the closest thing I've ever tried to a breakup.
I went through a divorce, and I think the job was tougher.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I wanted to get to. Really.
I was with my ex for 12 years.
Jesus.
Yeah, and I moved to Copenhagen to be with them, and then out of not out of the blue. It wasn't. There were issues, but it was like either we fixed them and she was like, it's the or. And so I was surprised, but that again, I was like, fine, I'm getting a personal trainer. I'm getting a dietitian.
Boom.
I'm going to get my shit together. I became a published author. I got to speak at inbound. You know, like I
Boom, boom,
focused,
boom.
that energy went from saving my relationship, which was doomed from the start, or not from the start, but, you know, it was on its way out to funneling my energy into my career. And yeah.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah. But I saw that coming a bit more than the job.
That's interesting. Okay, that's super interesting.
Yeah.
Because I feel like one thing, it's just like so again, I haven't tried it, but imagine when you're in a breakup, what you would probably do years after or later is like always check their Instagram and what are they up to. And I feel like I do that with the old companies.
Aww.
I don't know about you, but like I keep checking the old companies, and even also just the ones I left, so I didn't get laid off, or like the ones I just left. I'm like, no matter how you flip it, they're a part of you.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that sometimes I don't want them to be a part of you.
Yeah.
but no matter what you do, like this experience and this what you went through is suddenly just a part of your story.
It's a chapter in your book, yeah.
Yeah,
like,
right?
But the first thing I did was unfollow them on social media.
Really?
Not my ex, yes, but also the company. Because I just couldn't, it was like opening scabs.
Yeah.
You know, because I was seeing what they were doing, and I'm like, that's me. Like, I'm supposed to be the one who's part of this. And so I couldn't really do that anymore.
No.
I'm still, like, I had my leaving drinks. There was like 20 people there. Like, I'm still well thought of, and that's really obviously a good sign. But I couldn't really... It's like, if you break up, you got to break up.
Yeah.
Like, I can't be like, I can't be friends.
No, we're done. We're done here.
Yeah.
No, I get that. All
But now we're getting near the end, but I wanted
Yes.
to talk about the advice, right? So
Yes.
we've gone through the cycle.
Yeah.
My advice, one, get a union. And the reason I say get a union, it is expensive for some people, but one, they can check all of your employment contracts. And this is Danish. I'm only talking from a Danish perspective. They can check your employment contracts, make sure there's anything dodgy. In my case, they gave me advice on what to do in the interview or in the firing sort of layoff talk.
And I think it's kind of impressive they found time for you. You got the message like a day before, right?
Yeah, they opened at 8:30 and my call was at 9.
Wow.
So I just called them right away and I said, this is a situation. And they were like, don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. If you can record the conversation, record. They just gave me boom, boom, boom. And then once you get it, send it to us. And then a lawyer goes through it.
Wow.
So, and what happened in that sense is I got a severance offer because that's also something that you should get if it's a layoff and you want to part in good ways. And by getting my union involved, I got double.
Wow.
And
Great.
it wasn't the thing with a union, it's leverage as well. Because if your union, so if you just say to your employer, I'm not happy with that, they can go, this is what you get. Like, that's it. Yeah. But when I say, okay, my union is going to actually negotiate on my behalf, well, then they have to get a representative. They have to get a lawyer. So I have my lawyer. It's like paying a retainer. I have a lawyer on retainer. So then my company has to get a lawyer. That costs them money. Then we might have to go to court. Then we might have to go to arbitration. That's expensive. That's long. They don't want to do that. So the second I was like, okay, I'm going to have my union look at this. And my union said, nothing illegal happened. So that was fine. But they said, there can be areas of this that are open for negotiation. Yeah. And we think you should ask for this, 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 and this. I went back and I said, this is what my union thinks. And they said, done. Got it.
Wow.
So I think it's that leverage of saying,
that's really cool.
My union. And so, I mean, I pay about 500 kroner a month for access to this. Not a ton of money considering how much it has helped me through my career of like at least checking my warrants packages, checking my start date, whatever it might be. There's someone there who speaks English, who is a lawyer, who's going to advise me on what to do.
And especially in your case, because you're also not Danish.
And I'm not Danish.
Which
that's true.
Like, it just adds a layer on top of it.
It's a layer of protection. Absolutely. So I would strongly advise anyone to get a union. Yeah. It is an expense, and you might think it's like insurance. I might never need it. No. But when you need it, you really need it.
That's another thing for another day. So
and I would say advice number 2, have your network. Keep your network active. I reached out to my network, but I keep that network kind of warm. But you don't want to have to activate your network when you need a job. No. Like you want to have that connection with people. So you know.
I think fundamentally what I've always found is that people only activate the network when they need it.
Yeah.
That's a complete opposite of what you need to do.
Yeah, you need to stay
warm. Keep it active. I know it's a lot more work, but it is what it is. Like keep it active so when you finally do need it, like in this case, then it's there for you.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
A lot of people only come to their network when they need something from it. And I always found that super weird.
And that's harder, right? That's harder to like, hey, friend, remember that coffee?
We haven't talked in 5 years, and I ghosted you the last 2 times, but I'm looking for a job.
Now I need something.
Like I get a lot of that. Like it's kind of funny because like after I started SparkForce, just a quick anecdote here, but just like after I started SparkForce, you know, we're hiring a lot and there's not a lot of places hiring marketeers right now. So
Yeah.
I get a lot of applications. Let's put it that way, and I'm cool. Like I'm not a bitter person, but I always smile a little bit and kind of like I can't help but jitter just a little bit when people, I don't want to say come crawling back, but like when there's some
well.
yeah,
Who
like
comes
look how the
crawling?
tables have turned.
My, the turntables.
I'm not bitter, and I always approach people with like open smile and like, but I'm always like, you really should have treated me better back then, man. Like really, it was this okay? I'll help you now, but come on,
Yeah.
right?
And I think that's maybe another point that I wasn't thinking about because Copenhagen at least is small.
Super small.
Super small. Do not burn those bridges.
Do not
and
burn
that's
those
with
bridges.
my previous employer. I haven't burned that bridge. Hopefully this podcast isn't that because I'm not saying bad things about them.
Nope.
It's just this was a situation.
Yeah.
But don't burn those bridges because you never know.
It is so
never
insane.
know where you're
Like,
going to bump into this person
I
again.
think I've burned bridges like 3 times or something, really burned. Like specifically where I was like, I want to burn this bridge. and every time I've regretted it later.
Yeah.
Every time.
Every time.
And it's the smallest things, man. Like I had okay, let me tell you a quick story. So I was interviewing back when I was looking for my first job. I think it was like after uni or something. And I was talking to this guy who I used to work together with. He was not my manager, but like our other managers. I knew him, like not was friends, but we knew each other. And I went for an interview at his place, like at his company. And I remember I showed up I was a young guy, I had like a shirt on, I was like suited up and stuff. I was ready, and we had this talk. And then he completely ghosted me. Completely. And I went there, wrote to him and stuff like that, and like he invited me in, and then he never heard from him again. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I'm also a busy guy. I kind of run the same size company he's at now. But I've never ghosted anyone like that. I would never dare to do anything like that. And he ghosted me. And then when he came back to me, I want to say 5 or 6 years later, didn't hear from him. And he was like, hey man, I heard, I see you're killing it and you're doing really great and good things. I was wondering if you could help me find another XYZ marketeer for this company. I was like, and then I went to my
you do remember
bosses.
my name.
Yeah,
you do remember who I am.
And then I went to my bosses, and I was like, and I remember my CEO back in the day, he was like, I can say who that was. There was Jesper at Templify, and he was super cool. And he said, fuck it, let it rip. so I was just like, I'll let it rip. So I went to, hey man, I'm going to be honest here. I'm not going to help you this time because you didn't help me back then. And I'm kind of like, that was really bad. And I really hated that. And I think you should seriously consider being a better person in the future.
Whoa.
So consider that. I'm not going to help you this time around, but I wish you all the best. Have a great day. I wrote that. Something like
damn.
that. Almost like that. And that was me burning a bridge, right? And then what happened? A few months later, then he invested in a company who was placed next to the company I was working at that time. And then he was by the office all the time. So I had to look at him like, oh, hey. That was weird. This is awkward. And it's just like there was nothing good
so
coming
tiny.
out of it, but it felt awesome.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
do I regret it? Yes, but not 100% because it still felt fucking awesome. But at the same point, I also feel like sometimes you're at the point where sometimes you also need to tell people if you're doing something wrong. Like but it's a fine balance. And these days, I never try to burn a bridge.
You know, it would have been kind of funny.
No.
If you're like, sure, yeah, let me get back to you.
And just ghosted.
Ghosted him.
I should have done that. Let me see what I can figure out.
Yeah, let me find something out. I'll get back to you.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's so true. And I think I've been very blessed to work in really great companies. And I still have strong ties to most of them. Of course, there's one in particular who shan't be named, but I mean, I'm very close with the people. But my old bosses from Plan Day, my boss from Dixa, I'm on their advisory board for a company now. Like, it just because you leave doesn't mean you have to leave on bad terms.
No, definitely not.
And be the type of manager that when people leave, they think highly of you, and be the type of employee that if your manager leaves, they're going to remember you. Because also, that's the other thing. I brought with Tu Onamundo people that I work with at Plan Day, people I work with at Dixa. I bring my tribe with me where I go because I know the people I want to be surrounded by.
So much. Right?
So don't burn those bridges. And I think the main takeaway too is you are not your job. And I think for people like us, where we work in marketing, we talk about marketing in our free time, we read about marketing, we write about marketing.
Yeah.
When you're not doing marketing, it can feel very like you're untethered. And luckily I had my family. Yeah. Some people don't have families, but maybe have a hobby or have a partner or someone that keeps you tethered. Because if it wasn't for my 3-year-old girl saying, Mommy, why are you crying? I probably would have sat there crying for a lot longer and feeling terrible. But instead I went and I played hide and seek with her. And I felt everything's going to be okay, you know?
And it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
I think that's like, if there's anything you can also, like, I know this is more maybe not like direct advice, but like, mental, make that, go through the phases, but go through them fast. Like don't
But feel them. Don't ignore them.
Don't
I think
ignore
feel
them,
them.
but don't
Yeah.
don't swaddle yourself in pain, right?
Yeah.
Like it sucks. Get over it, right?
Yeah.
And also, if you're listening, you're most likely a marketeer, right? And who are the best people at marketing? Should be at marketing themselves. Should be marketeers.
Yes.
So use that. Use your abilities. Like use the fact that you are a marketeer.
Yeah.
Don't be ashamed of it.
And I think just on that note,
Yeah.
I was unemployed for 3 weeks.
Exactly.
You know, I was unemployed for 3 weeks, and the second I was on the market, I never did like a big announcement like on LinkedIn, like I am open to work. I reached out to people in my network, and within 3 weeks, I had a new offer on the table, and that was because I built a brand, because people trust me, and because people that used to work with me liked working with me, had nice things to
Exactly.
say about me. You know, so it all adds up.
And
It
I know
all
that's easy for us to say, and I know where we are now, but it's the same for me when I left Templify on my own terms. But that was I had what was it? I think it was 7 job offers in the first week or something. It was crazy, right? And that's because of all the stuff I'd done previously. I'd activated my network before I wanted to leave, right?
Exactly.
So think about that now. I know it might be too late if you just got laid off, but if you haven't been yet, think about it.
And if you have just been laid off, it gets better.
It gets better.
Hang in there. It gets better. It sucks.
If you need a fist pump, just ping us. I'll fist pump you.
Yeah, we'll talk to you. We'll go for a beer with you, and we'll pretend to know what you're talking about, and
show empathy.
and show empathy.
We don't
and
have that
bitch
much,
about your ex-employer. What an idiot! They're lost. Yeah. No, but it'll be okay. Everything will be okay.
And thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, and good luck out there.
Yeah,
We love you.
Go kill it.
We love
All right.
you.
Boom.
Do you love them, Casper?
I love him. I
Oh,
love people.
okay. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Bye.